Welcome back to Kings of the North. We're back in our chairs. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. And Landis, like camps are starting. Football's here, right? Hey, welcome back, football.
Football is here. I think most teams open up on Thursday, right? The first. That's a big day.
Couple teams. So you can start like 30 days before your first game, right? Is that when you can start practice? So most teams open on Saturday, the 31st. But there are some teams that open, like Minnesota's already started because they open on Thursday that week. So then they can start camp 2 days earlier. So this is the week when things are starting. And we're like sort of taking a last reset of the board, of the Northern board. And then from here out, we're going to be doing a lot of what's going on in camp, preseason predictions, like diving into the football. But one of the things we have to reset is we're adding 2 teams. How exciting is that? We're adding teams. We are changing the geography of the United States and putting 2 more teams on our list of official Power Conference Northern teams. Bill, are you fired up?
I am fired up. I've wanted these 2 teams to be part of what we do from the start. And I was going to push for it if I was not confident that you would get yourself there. And I was confident. I was confident that you would get yourself there. So I didn't lobby for it too hard, but I think these 2 teams very much jive with what we're doing here.
So thank you for allowing me to work this out on my own. I needed some time. What I needed to do was look at a map. And then I did some real latitudinal assessment.
Yeah.
So we'll get more into latitudes later this month on this show. But I looked at latitudes, I looked at snowfall, and then I looked at, are they good? And it's like, oh, they are good. So Kansas and Kansas State, welcome to the North. And if they both stunk right now, I'm not sure they'd be here. Like, is that part of it? Is that part of why you want the Jayhawks and the Wildcats here? Because they're playing some pretty stinking good ball right now?
Yeah, they're fun. Like pre Lance Leipold, Kansas, I could probably do without. Kansas State has consistently been a pretty good program, but you kind of can't take one without the other. I don't think so. It's more about Kansas. I think if Kansas wasn't very good, maybe we wouldn't be doing this right now. But they're pretty good. Like they might win the Big 12. So I'm glad we have them.
So let me reset the reset here for a moment. We are going 5 days a week, live show the week before the season starts. That will be the true launch of what Kings of the North will be. We've called what we've done the last year kind of a soft launch, but it was a long soft launch. And I thought we did good stuff. I think we established what we want to be and what we want to talk about and what we want to bring to the college football landscape. We're so grateful to anybody who has jumped on board, whether it's for 10 minutes of one episode or every minute of every episode. But we're going to really get going on August 26th. It will be sort of like a relaunch. And on that show, I think we will reintroduce ourselves to those of you who have been here all along and introduce ourselves to people who are like, well, what's this thing? So when we do that, we will talk about what makes a team of the North. And we'll talk a little bit more about snowfall and latitude. And it's mostly that. I mean, really, I didn't do like days of research. I did like hours of research. So Kansas and Kansas State fit that. So I think one of the things, Bill, of like, why are we adding Kansas and Kansas State? This brings us to 28 teams. Last year, we had Washington State and Oregon State, and now they're not in the Power 4 anymore. And it doesn't mean they don't exist, but this is a power conference football show, mostly. Doesn't mean we will never talk about the MAC. It doesn't mean we will never talk about Washington State and Oregon State, or maybe like a super interesting or really good Division 2 or 3 team that's in the North. If somebody in North Dakota plays in 4 feet of snow and plays a football game, we'll probably talk about it here. But we did lose 2 teams, which is, it's nice to add 2 teams. And I feel a little bit bad, but like, I don't know. Now you want to bring Washington and Oregon State back too, don't you?
You're a power conference elitist, and that's okay.
Oh, no, I am. Okay. Thank you for making it okay, because I definitely am. So that's part of it. But also, so in the end, what we have now with 28 teams, we have 16 of the 18 in the Big Ten. It's everybody but USC and UCLA. And again, we have to figure out exactly what we're going to call USC and UCLA. But when you're in Southern California with sunshine and beaches, you're not officially in the North. So that's 16. We have 3 in the ACC with Syracuse, Boston College, and Pitt. And we have Notre Dame as an independent. That's 20. And now we're going to have half the Big 12, and I think it divides itself pretty well. The 8 northern teams in the Big 12, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Iowa State, Colorado, Utah, and BYU were already here. They were with us from the get-go. Now we're adding Kansas and Kansas State. And then the 8 southern teams in the Big 12 are 4 teams in Texas, Texas Tech, Baylor, TCU, and Houston. They're not of the North. Nobody's disputing that. Ari lives in Texas. He might be. Can they be part of the North? No, it's Texas. UCF, which is in Florida, that's not of the North.
Nope.
Arizona and Arizona State, which are in Arizona, that's not of the North. And Oklahoma State. Now, and Oklahoma's in the SEC. They're not in the North, right? So I think like Kansas and Kansas State were on the edge, but when you compare them to the rest of the southern teams in the Big 12 compared to the rest of the northern teams in the Big 12, I think they belong more with this. And then we neatly divide that conference in half. We got half.
Yeah. No, I think it makes sense. I don't view I've never viewed Kansas nor Kansas State sort of in that southern section of the Big 12. And I guess if you looked at a map too, like if you could probably say to yourself, well, like if you're doing Kansas and Kansas State, maybe you could do like a Kentucky and a Louisville. The problem with Kentucky and Louisville is one, Kentucky has cast a slot with the SEC, so screw them. And then Louisville just kind of gets hurt because they're in Kentucky with the team that decided they wanted to be in the SEC. So I do think that I think Kansas and Kansas State make sense for a lot of reasons. Geography being one of them, for sure. You know, we fudge geography a little bit. That's okay. We're not a geography show. We're a snow and football show. But I think they fit. I think sort of ideologically as well, I think, with a lot of what we talk about. Kansas and Kansas State do.
So then we're going to run a bunch of interviews on this show because at the Big 12, I basically went around and as many people as I could with Kansas State, and Kansas is like, do you want to come north? Is it okay if we take you? So you're going to hear a bunch of interviews on the show.
They say we were unaware we weren't in the north to begin with.
You know, it is a little bit of a divide. You'll hear some of the answers.
Yeah.
Chris Kleiman, the Kansas State coach, has a tremendous snowblower answer, which made me want to hug him. He didn't want to hug me. But one of the other parts of this, and it's not nothing, is that both of the coaches of these teams are clearly of the North. Chris Kleiman, the Kansas State head coach, is an Iowa guy who had incredible success at North Dakota State and then went to Kansas State. To him, he's in the South right now, but he's a Northern guy through and through. It's not like Kansas State got its head coach from Louisiana Tech. So that matters. And Lance Leipold owned the world at Wisconsin Whitewater and then made his leap to Buffalo. So he is clearly of the North. It's not like Kansas went looking for their coach at LSU like they did with Les Miles. So I think that matters a little bit too. These are Northern sensibilities running these two programs.
100%. Yeah. I don't, if I go all in with Wisconsin Whitewater is like the most northern place a person could be, I feel like I'd be positioned pretty well there. Hard to beat. Unless you're like in Canada.
We also might do some Canadian football in the show. We got to figure that out.
Yeah.
So they are here. We are going to run through a bunch of interviews, but we want to sort of set the groundwork first. And again, if for everybody who is a Kansas or Kansas State fan who's here, maybe, and it's like, awesome. Like, we're so excited for you to be here. For those of you who have been with us and are like, what, why you're adding these people? We want to help maybe introduce Kansas and Kansas State to the fans of West Virginia and Oregon and Wisconsin and Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State and Maryland and everybody who's been here along the way. So let's start by taking a little peek sort of at the state of Kansas State football. And actually, before we do that, why don't we just ask Chris Kleiman about it, the head coach of Kansas State, who joined me at Big 12 Media Days. Joined now by Chris Kleiman, Kansas State coach on Kings of the North. Coach, so grateful for us joining.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
All right. So we're talking Northern college football here. You're as north as it gets. Kansas State is practically the South to you, right? Compared to where you've been?
It's the South from where I have been, but I would still consider it a Midwest school. You bet.
Do you believe in geographic or cultural commonality when it comes to a coach finding a job?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's really important. I've spent my whole career in the Midwest or upper Midwest.
Yep.
And I think I connect with the players, connect with the kids, connect with the high school coaches. I've played in the snow. I've played in the rain. I've played in the cold. I've played, had the humid days in the summer. But there's something about kids from the upper Midwest and the North that have a little toughness, a little nastiness to them.
Do you own a snow shovel?
We own the best snowblower in Manhattan.
Whoa. See, that's why I had to get you. You are, see, that's north, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
could you win at a Southern school, or
Oh, yeah.
could you succeed?
Yeah, we
But
could.
it just would be
Yeah, we
different.
could. I would just right now. I've chosen to be in the upper Midwest in the north,
Love
but absolutely we could.
I have a stat that I want to share with you. Last 3 years, as a stat site that I like, that just ranks everybody by offense and defense. 4 teams, top 20 offense, top 20 defense, both, each of the last 3 years. Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Kansas State. Does that make sense to you?
You bet. Yeah, you got to be able to do it on both sides of the ball, and you got to be successful to be able to win 8, 9, 10 games a year.
But how do you maintain that? Because doesn't sometimes at some places you end up leaning to a side of the ball with an identity or something? To be that balance, I think is quite an achievement.
Well, that's trying to sustain success that way too, and that's why I don't want to be a roller coaster of win 8 games, win 4 games, win 9 games, win 5 games, of trying to sustain that success. And the way that I feel like you do that is you try to be really good on both sides of the ball and really good in the kicking game.
Okay. How did you manage to get Avery Johnson ready for this, right? Through the course of last year, while having a quarterback like Will Howard, but also you keep that development track on. You know what I mean? I feel like you guys struck a great balance with that a year ago.
Yeah, we did. It was some challenges for sure because Avery wanted to play and Will wanted to play, and there's only one quarterback that's got the ball, but it worked itself out, and they both had good success at times. And at the end of the season, it was important for us to let Avery know that he was going to be the quarterback of the future, and Will found a great spot at Ohio State, and I'm excited for him. But those are the tough decisions sometimes that you make. But we're going to have Avery for a long time, and so we're excited about what he's going to be able to do.
So good luck to you guys this year.
You bet.
And it's okay. We're taking you in the north, right? You're okay with it?
Yeah,
Kings
sure.
of the North, we want you. We want you. You're too good. We got to have you. You're okay with it?
You bet.
You have the best snowblower man. Did you buy it in North Dakota and then you brought it?
Brought it down.
Okay.
It's a Cadillac.
He's north. We're taking him north. He's Chris Kleiman. Good luck to you this season,
Appreciate
Coach.
it. Thanks, guys.
All right. So Chris Kleiman is in on being here. And just like, if people don't know, Bill, Chris Kleiman at North Dakota State, before he got the Kansas State head job in 2019, won 4 national championships in 5 years at North Dakota State. This guy is a baller, man.
He is a baller. So he was the North Dakota State thing kind of started with Craig Bowl, who then went to Wyoming. Craig Bowl won a couple, with 2 or 3 national titles, and I think Chris Kleiman was his DC. Do I have that right?
I think that's right.
And then Kleiman took over and kept it rolling, and it kept rolling for a couple of years after Kleiman left too. But no, this is one of the most accomplished coaches in the sport right now. Just that people don't talk about him in those terms for whatever reason.
56 years old, played at Northern Iowa, then started his coaching career at Northern Iowa, then Western Illinois, Kansas, Missouri State, Northern Iowa again, North Dakota State, and Kansas State. This guy's been all over the North. He's a Northern guy. And Kansas State, it's a stat that you heard me drop in the Chris Kleiman interview. There's some more Kansas State interviews that you're going to hear me drop the same stat because I was just amazed by it. That they're good on both sides of the ball. They're a consistent winner. They've won 39 games in the last 5 years. That's 16th among power conference schools, which you might be like, okay, 16th. But I mean, the schools ahead of them are Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, those kind of schools. And then they're right there. So this is a balanced, consistent winner. And the other thing about Kansas State is they are a balanced, consistent winner that might be headed for a peak. Now, they just won the Big 12 2 years ago when they beat TCU, the team that eventually made the national title game, in the Big 12 championship game. And in this 12-team format, that would have gotten them in the college football playoff. Back then, it did not get them in the playoff. TCU still got in the playoff, even though it lost to Kansas State. But with where they are right now, Landis, Kansas State was picked to finish second in the preseason Big 12 media poll, pretty close to Utah. Utah had 906 points. Kansas State had 889. Utah got 20 first-place votes. Kansas State got 19 first-place votes. So this is a playoff contender to win the Big 12, and they have a second-year quarterback in Avery Johnson who sort of helped usher Will Howard to Ohio State because K-State was like, this guy is the greatest quarterback recruit in the history of our program. He's going to play in year 2. There is a lot out there for them. Also, by the way, this is like emblematic of Kansas State. They did not have a single player make first team preseason all Big 12, even though they might win the thing. Because they are not a superstar program. They are a 1 through 22, 1 through 44, 1 through 85. We're a really good program.
Yeah, there's something there with that program that obviously gets traced back, I think, to Bill Snyder. Like they just like figured out a recipe to be a consistent winner there. And that'll have to change probably in the new college football with like NIL and as we get into revenue sharing and all that stuff. But there's a pretty high floor there, I think, because they just like figured out during the Bill Snyder years, like how to do it in a way that suits Kansas State really well and keeps them mostly competitive. And then you probably inject a little bit of different life in that when you bring Chris Kleiman in there. So they're a really good team. Like if you look at I think some of the betting lines too, it's like practically even, I think, between Kansas State and Utah for who might win the Big 12. It feels like kind of a coin flip. It feels like we've talked about whether or not the Big 12 might be only a one bid league. I think a team like Kansas State, like if Kansas State and Utah are awesome and one of them has to lose the Big 12 championship, I think like these are probably the two teams that could get the Big 12 to be more than a one bid league. So they're good, and I think they're kind of around for a while because like Avery Johnson's not going to be one and done. He's only a true sophomore, so you're getting at least 2 more years of him. And then maybe if he flourishes, which I think a lot of people in Manhattan think that he will, that could set something up for them in terms of attracting more quarterback talent and kind of keep this thing rolling.
Yeah. Welcome. We're glad to have you.
Yeah.
All in on the Wildcats being part of Kings of the North. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas football. Kansas football is fascinating. Kansas football, the previous 15 years, or maybe like the 4-team playoff era, worst program in the power conferences. Is that a fair assessment?
It's them or Vanderbilt. Yeah.
Yeah. So what they have done right now, Lance Leipold, we were not able to get him on the show here, but I did talk to him at Big 12 Media Days, and I explained the North. What do you think? And he said, Lance Leipold is a heck of a dude, just like Chris Kleiman is. Lance Leipold told me a story of when he got to Kansas. Again, as we said, having been at Wisconsin, Whitewater, and Buffalo, he said they were having a meeting with the trainer and the support staff and the medical people at Kansas about practicing. And so they started out like practicing. They're talking about practicing in the heat, and that there is a certain threshold of like, we're not going to practice outside when it gets to this hot. We have to be aware of this health and safety of the players. Lance Leipold is like, we're good. All sounds great. And then at Kansas, they started talking about, okay, this is when we would come inside if it gets too cold, wind chill, this kind of thing, health and safety of the players. And Lance Leipold said, he was like, hey, man, I never stopped the practice for wind chill at Wisconsin, Whitewater, or Buffalo. I'm not doing it at Kansas. I'm not afraid of a wind chill. And again, Lance Leipold says, I'm not afraid of a wind chill. And I'm like, it's like, you are one of us. Please join us.
That's a t-shirt. That's a KOTN t-shirt.
I'm not afraid of a wind chill.
I'm not afraid of a wind chill. Yeah.
I think we could get him to do a commercial with us. So like, he is a baller. He is unbelievable. And what they have done at Kansas the last 2 years, they've won 15 games the last 2 years. Kansas has more wins in the last 2 years than they had in the previous 8. They were 14-79 from 2014 to 2021. They are 15-11 the last 2 years. You see preseason lists of like the best coaches in college football. Lance Leipold gets on a lot of top 10 lists.
Mm-hmm.
Both these guys are proof of making that jump. It's a lot of like what I think we would talk about with Curt Cignetti at Indiana right now, that if you can coach and win against your peers at a lower level, a lower classification of college football, why can't you make the leap and now find new peers and beat these peers as well? Chris Kleiman and Lance Leipold are the embodiment of this, especially Lance Leipold. And so it's a great thing for any coach out there who's winning at the FCS level, or maybe winning in the MAC, or maybe winning at Division II, is be like, hey man, like, I know how to win. Give me a shot. What he has done at Kansas the last 2 years, they won 9 games last year. It's practically a miracle.
I was going to use that word. Like it is, I think, without question, the best coaching job like anyone in the sport has done in the last, I don't even know, like I want to say like 50 years. Like I want to go back and like see other dramatic turnarounds and see how this compares. This is a program that what was their spike? 2007, is that right? When they went to the Orange Bowl, was it that year?
Yeah, it was. Mark Mangino had an era at Kansas football. They had a year where they had a big showdown with Missouri, and it's not like it's never happened before, but it's been a while.
It has been a long time, and for the majority of the time since that Mangino kind of rise, it's a program that like felt utterly hopeless. Like just like, why would anyone ever want to go coach there? It's dead in the water. There's absolutely nothing you can do to make this program relevant. And Lance Leipold in 2 years has done it. Like it is incredible. He's a tremendous coach, and they've also locked him down for a long time too. He's 60 years old. They just signed him to a pretty long contract extension, so it feels like this is probably where Lance Leipold might end his career. And he could end it as the guy who maybe gets Kansas to the playoff, which is an insane sentence to come out of someone's mouth, given where this program was, 3 or 4 years ago.
12 straight years without winning any more than 3 games in a season, which is just unbelievable. No more than 3 wins for a decade plus. How horrible is that for fans? 12-1 in 2007 under Mark Mangino. But then Mark Mangino left. They went to Turner Gill, then Charlie Weiss, then David Beatty, then Les Miles. 2 examples there of like trying to catch a coach on the way down.
Yeah.
Charlie Weiss had been the Notre Dame head coach. Les Miles had been the LSU head coach. And it's like, no, try to catch somebody on the way up. And he was in his name clearly was in the mix for both the Nebraska job and the Wisconsin job. Before Matt Rule and Luke Fickell got those jobs, he would have made sense at either of them. But I talked to people in and around both these programs at Big 12 Media Days, and there are people talking like, if he does this, he can have a statue. Mm-hmm. He can be the Tom Osborne or Bob Devaney of Kansas football in a way that no matter what he did at Nebraska, they already have guys like that. They already have Barry Alvarez at Wisconsin. You can't be that. You can't be the guy who brings your program to a new height and is the greatest ever when you go to schools like that. He can now. He's not in his 30s, right? He's got to do it now, but he has an opportunity at Kansas, and Kansas just put out a video this week about their new locker rooms. Like they are doing things. They are completely renovating their stadium. We'll talk about that at the end. They're not playing their home games in their stadium this year, but this is one of those things where success by a coach leads to a commitment from the university, and that's what gets a coach to stay. And we keep having these conversations. Bill O'Brien at Boston College, great fit long-term. Let's see what happens if he stays and finishes his career there. Greg Schiano at Rutgers, great fit long-term. He's going to finish his career there. Lance Leipold doesn't have sort of like the same roots with Kansas that those guys have with Boston College and Rutgers. But if he feels like this is the school that gave me my chance, they are committed with resources, and we have shown that we have a shot. We have an opportunity to win, and we're in a major conference.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll stay and do this. This is what I will do with the rest of my coaching career. And if that happens, it could be a wonderful marriage between Lance Leipold and Kansas football.
It could be. I think it will be. And it's not even, that's not even about merely like this year or the next couple of years. When like this year, like Kansas is maybe not even like somewhat of a step below probably where Utah and Kansas State are, but Kansas is absolutely a Big 12 contender. Kansas is absolutely, I think, probably a playoff dark horse at worst, if not something more than that, with the talent they have and the way they're going to be competitive in their own conference. And you hope that can sustain for a couple of years. But I also wonder about, to kind of loop it back in with the Bill Snyder stuff at Kansas State, like, will Lance Leipold, however long he's here, then like sort of leave an infrastructure that allows Kansas to be perennially a team that has a higher floor than it's had in the previous decade and had for much of its existence. So it's not just about the short-term immediate stuff with Kansas and Lance Leipold. It's about a guy who knows how to win, has done it at a lot of different places, has multiple national championships, leaving his mark on a place for the long term. And I think Kansas could benefit from that as well. And
it's like, it's a little bit of sacrilege, but that's the comparison. And you'll hear it in one of the interviews. Can Lance Leipold for Kansas be their Bill Snyder?
Oh, really? Okay.
That's what they're hoping. He's 60.
Right.
Lance Leipold is 60. He worked hard for a long time to get this chance, but he's been there 2 years. And if he the next decade, he could redefine Kansas football. So we're happy to have him. Welcome. I'm plugging Kansas. Welcome, Kansas. Isn't this good? By the way, picked fourth in the Big 12. Like this is a great program. Utah 1, Kansas State 2, Oklahoma State 3, Kansas 4. So I think now in the North, with the teams that we have claimed in the North, I think we have 4 North teams that will be right in the mix at the top of the Big 12 this year. And that's Kansas and Kansas State, and that's West Virginia and Iowa State. And that's awesome for us.
Yeah, it is awesome for us. And like, who knows? Colorado like has I think a high ceiling. Whether or not they'll get there, I have no idea. No one's picking Colorado to win the Big 12, but like I am happy to have more reason now to watch the Big 12. Like I was already juiced to watch the Big 12 with the teams we had. Like now to bring Kansas and Kansas State into the mix, 2 teams that will absolutely, I think, be at the top of that league. Like I just can't wait to watch how it all plays out, and I'm excited to watch these 2 teams in particular.
I'm an idiot. We have 5. Utah, the preseason favorite, is the team of the North. What am I doing? Yeah, we have 5. Yeah. Utah, Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa State, West Virginia, plus Colorado as an every week interesting, great players, could spring an upset, could it blow a gasket, kind of fun team to watch. And then BYU and Cincinnati have some work to do. But, you know, if you're of the North, and I like it. Like we have a team. So the Big Ten is the heartbeat of Northern football. And there's an opposite conference that we can tell to cram it in the SEC. And then the third major conference, we split it in half. I don't know that anybody else is splitting it in half, but I'm happy every time a Northern Big 12 team plays Arizona or Oklahoma State to be like, well, we know you're in the same conference, but also Arizona can cram it. You know, they're not one of us. So when Kansas plays Arizona, which is going to be a huge game, like, come on, man, come on, North. If you're an Ohio State or a Penn State fan watching that game, root for Kansas. You don't need to root for Arizona. Nobody needs to root for Arizona. So we have some loyalties here that I hope the North can bring to bear.
Do we want to award a Northern Big 12 champion at the end of the year?
No, I think that's probably good. Yeah. I mean,
unless,
it'll be easy.
Unless Utah just wins the league, right? Then it's clearly Utah.
Right. I mean, like the North is going to win the Big 12 because so it'll be a little repetitive, but that's okay.
Right. Okay.
Maybe we should award a Southern Big 12 champion because it'll be like, oh, good try, Oklahoma State. Sorry, didn't quite get there. I think I think we're going to have an all North Big 12 championship game. Like Arizona, it's like people like Arizona and Noah Fafita is great, but they lost their whole coaching staff. I don't know. Like you're just going to drop an entirely new coaching staff. And some of their guys went to Washington with Jed Fish, not all of them. But that makes me think that Arizona is going to win the Big 12 over Kyle Whittingham, Chris Kleiman, Lance Leipold, Matt Campbell, and Neil Brown with his co-pilot Garrett Green. I'm supposed to believe that Arizona, with an entirely new coaching staff, like they're going to beat that. Or Mike Gundy, who is a successful long-term coach. Do they have a quarterback? I'm not sure Oklahoma State's playing with a quarterback this year. They're going to wildcat snap to Ollie Gordon every week and hope that he doesn't get in trouble off the field anymore. Not that Mike Gundy would care about that. Like, I'm supposed to believe that for real? I'm worried about Oklahoma State. North is winning the Big 12. Come on.
Oklahoma State's quarterback is Alan Bowman, who's the same age as me and you.
He's the same age as me and you. He was a 6th stringer at Michigan. And now he's like, oh, I think Oklahoma's. Do you? Have you seen Cam Rising? Have you seen Avery Johnson? Have you seen Jalen Daniels? By the way, Devin Neal's going to run all over. Kansas running back Devin Neal's going to run all over the Big 12, right? Come on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so like, yeah. That's not what, no, we know what we do need to do though. We need to revisit some skill conversations if we're bringing the Jalen Daniels, Devin Neal backfield into the mix.
No, that's true. And like, so this means now, so again, now we are at 28 teams. When we talk about the North, we will be talking about 28 teams instead of 26. When we rank the best of the North, Kansas and Kansas State will be in that mix. When we watch games every weekend and come back and discuss those games, when we predict games every week, as we will do every Thursday on this show, Kansas and Kansas State are now in this mix. So it's a little bit more work for us, but it is worth it. Yep. We want to be watching these teams, and I think you guys want to be watching them too. And so I'm excited about this. Bill is excited about this. And now we can talk about them. So and I will say, I mean, like Kansas State, awesome. So helpful at Big 12 Media Days. Great folks down there. So we have a bunch of interviews lined up. We've already heard from Chris Kleiman. Here's what we got coming up. Interesting interview, I think, with a guy who has a rare perspective on this. His name is Colin Sexton. He is the Deputy Athletic Director at Kansas. He is a former wide receiver under Bill Snyder at Kansas State. So I'm trying to ask about the state of the state. Kansas as a state, what's football like there? When's the last time we've seen these two fan bases together? Which this much excitement and hope? What is the rivalry like? Who better to understand that than a guy who works at one school and played at the other school? So we're going to run him first. I think if you don't know much about Kansas and Kansas State, you will learn from him. Then we have Marquis Siegel, who is a safety for Kansas State. And we're talking about the North. We're bringing him north. Like, what does he think of this? He's from Nebraska. He's a northern guy. Fun talking to Marquis Siegel. You'll hear from him. Then we talk to Gene Taylor, who is the Kansas State athletic director and has been on the college football playoff committee in the past. I think one of the more, I think the number one football thing I'm interested in this season is like the spots 10 and 11 in the playoff. The battle between like the fourth team in the ACC and the Big Ten and the SEC and the Big Ten and the second team in a conference like the Big 12. So part of what I asked Gene Taylor about being in the North, I asked about snowblowers, but Bill also like that conversation from his playoff perspective about a second Big 12 team. Isn't that vital to what this season's how it's going to turn out?
Yeah, I'm actually, I haven't, as we record this, I actually haven't watched any of those interviews. So I'm excited to hear his perspective on that, because I find myself wondering, similar things about how exactly that's going to play out, and something we talked about, I think, when you were at Big 12 Media Days, just like how this league's going to be perceived sort of nationally, because we couldn't be more excited about it. I think a lot of people are excited about it, but is it going to hold the kind of respect that I think it needs to hold and will deserve when the time comes to get more than one team in?
And then the last interview is Stan Weber, former Kansas State quarterback, currently the analyst for Kansas State football games on the radio. So this guy has been around the program for 30 plus years. He knows everything about this. So he has some really good perspective on Kansas State, but then also, again, the rivalry, the state of the rivalry, what it's like in Kansas right now. So we have these interviews lined up. These are interesting programs that are worth talking about. And if you care about Northern college football, I think you'll enjoy these interviews. We will come back at the end to discuss a couple of the huge games that Kansas and Kansas State will be involved in this year. But for now, let's run through these four guys, as we welcome Kansas and Kansas State to the North. Joined now by Colin Sexton, Deputy Athletic Director at Kansas. And we were just talking, Colin, we're trying to decide, right? Kansas and Kansas State, do they belong with Kings of the North? But you're okay with it, right?
I think we're okay with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Do you own a snow shovel?
I do. Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Okay. You gotta be ready, right?
Yeah, have to always be ready for a little bit of snow. And like I was telling you, we have the best of both worlds, where we get all extremes. We get the heat and the snow and the sub-zero temps.
So, honestly, if Kansas and Kansas State were both coming off 1-11 seasons, well, we might not be taking you. I don't know. But Kansas and Kansas State are so interesting right now, and you are uniquely situated to comment on this because you played at Kansas State and now you work at Kansas. And the vibe, the college football vibe in the state of Kansas right now, what's it like for both these programs to be in the situations they're in right now? Because I don't have it in front of me, but man, for both these, right? K-State's been good for a long time, but Kansas has had its ups and downs. I don't know the last time they were both this good. Isn't it fun?
I don't know if they've ever both been this good, both KU and K-State. And I'm a proud Kansan. Grew up in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and I bounced around a little bit, but have been back in the state for the last 3 years. And the energy around college football in the state of Kansas right now is palpable, to where it is something that it's unbelievable to see how much prowess is taking place and how much people are taking note about what's happening at the University of Kansas and Kansas State. The rivalry is alive and well, which hasn't been the case for a long time, and we haven't done our part on the football end. And we've typically taken care of business on the basketball side of things, but now it's with the Big 12 being wide open, the state of Kansas, both KU and Kansas State, have a lot to say about, who's going to be that top dog.
Maybe a little sad to see Oklahoma and Texas go, but maybe not that sad, right? Opportunity abounds in the Big 12 right now, right?
Opportunity exists. And, you talk about just the amount of parity that is going to be in this league from top to bottom. No weeks off. I mean, there's not a single cupcake on anyone's schedule. Anybody can beat anybody. And I don't think anybody knows who's going to be in Arlington in December. And so talk about a KU and what we're trying to build and us having, a lot of returners for 2024. It's exciting and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Yeah. We're going to take it one game at a time and worry about the opponent ahead of us. But, to look forward a little bit, it's exciting to even, be in that conversation. And that's something that's going to become an expectation year in and year out is we expect to compete for Big 12 championships. And, we feel like we're right there and we're going to continue to invest to make sure that happens.
I hope we have some Kansas fans watching and listening to this show. I think we have some other people around the North who maybe are not super familiar with Kansas football at the moment. In that state, is the state of Kansas, is it a basketball state? Is it a football state? Is it a something else state? Is it a both state? You're a Kansan. You grew up there. You're a football player. What do people care about the most?
It's an everything state.
Okay.
And that I will say that, that might be something you're like, yeah, okay. It is an everything state because the beauty of the state of Kansas is most of it's a rural community, right? There's one big city. I guess you could consider Wichita to be a bigger city, but there's technically one big city that's split between Missouri and Kansas City. And otherwise there's just a bunch of rural communities where as a young kid growing up in that state, the only thing to do is play sports. And so you're playing every single sport you can play. And so everyone cares about every sport. It depends on the time of the year. But right now, it's everyone's talking football.
Awesome.
And then, when football season's over, it's everyone's all in on basketball. When basketball season's over, it's everyone's in on baseball, softball, et cetera. And so it's an exciting state that people really care about the sports. People are passionate. People care about their universities. And, that's why we all work in this business is because everyone has an affinity to the place they went to school and they care so much about what happens with their programs and it's alive and well in the state of Kansas.
What is happening with Kansas football right now since Lance Leipold arrived? What is it like to be part of that, to watch that, to embrace it, to watch the fan base be stirred by the revival of Kansas? It has to be a wonderful thing, yes?
It's something that probably couldn't be recreated anywhere else. I mean, you talk about, it's been done at Kansas State with Bill Snyder that, happened late 80s, early 90s when he inherited that program. But you really look around the country and there are very few that have had any type of futility. You could go as far as to use the word as futility as the University of Kansas had in its football program from about, 2009, 2010 to when Coach Lance Leipold arrived. And so what he's been able to do is nothing short of remarkable.
Yep.
And for me to have a front row seat, for me to be, contribute as much as I possibly can to the program and do what I can to help, us be successful is that's something that I have to pinch myself every now and then and realize that what we're doing is probably not going to be recreated anywhere else. I mean, at least not for a really, really long time. And so what he's been able to do is incredible. And everyone said it couldn't be done. And he said, watch. And he has a humble confidence that, when he gets in front of the cameras or he talks, he's not going to say anything that's other than, the coach speak, talk about his players. He just does a really good job with that. But he has a insane amount of confidence that he keeps inside of him. And he knows that he has a fabric and a blueprint to winning, and it's going to work at Kansas. And there's actually a video when he first addressed the team back in 2021, his first team address. He looked at him and said, "We will win here." And that still gives me chills. He said, "It might not be tomorrow, it might not be today, but we will win here." And he knew it was going to happen. And there were so many naysayers. But it's been awesome to see that build happen. And our fan base is so passionate. They're fully on board. And we're doing something really incredible. We have a $450 million stadium renovation project going on right now. Dave Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium. So that's going to be amazing. That'll open in August of 2025. So we're playing our games in Kansas City this year. But it's that type of investment can't happen without the right guy at the helm. And so having Coach Leipold at the helm, leading this program, seeing a rapid amount of success, we would be fools not to invest at a high level because football matters.
Let's go. You're firing me up. You played for Bill Snyder at Kansas State. Are there comparisons to be made?
I think we would be naive not to make comparisons just because the moment that Coach Snyder inherited Kansas State's program and the moment that Lance Leipold inherited Kansas football's program there's a lot of similarities there where people said it couldn't be done. And then you talk about just the human beings they are. They're both great human beings. They are insanely detail oriented, where they're not just concerned what's happening with the football program. They're concerned what's happening with the entire university's ecosystem, both of them. And so when you talk about the comparisons, absolutely. I mean, they're both winners. They know how to win, and they're both really good at doing it, and they're going to treat people the right way, and they have those Midwestern values that matter so much to fitting into what we're trying to do. So yeah, I think it's a testament to Coach Leipold that this early on in his tenure at a Power 4 program that he's been being compared to one of the legends.
Yeah. When you have a great coach, people come for him. You want people that other people want. That's a good sign. You don't be like, oh, we have a guy. No, nobody wants our guy. Nobody thinks he's good. So, but there is an opportunity, and we had this era in college football, right, where so many programs like had their defining guy, whether it was Bear Bryant in Alabama or Woody Hayes at Ohio State or Bobby Bowden or Joe Paterno or Bo Schembechler or, Darrell Royal down the list. And there are a lot of places like that. Whatever Nick Saban was at Alabama, and Nick Saban, in my opinion, was the greatest college football coach of all time. Bear Bryant still did it first, right? And then there are some places where you've never quite reached those heights over a long period of time, which presents, in an ideal world, an opportunity for someone like Lance Leipold at a place like Kansas, which for the right person, I would imagine, might be an attractive opportunity.
Absolutely. And you and I had actually talked about that a little bit ago is Kansas, when he got there, the slate was clean. He could pave his own path. He could do what he needed to do. And there wasn't a shadow of who did it better or a shadow of, hey, when we were this good, we won. I mean, early on, there were Mark Mangino, comparisons because that was when they went to the Orange Bowl and won the Orange Bowl about 15 years ago. That was the most success that Kansas football has experienced in a lot of, people's lifetime for the most part. And so for Lance to come in and really have the keys to a brand new vehicle that no one else has rode in and no one else has drove, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. And I think he's really taken that and owned it and made it his own, all while honoring the past. Sure. Right. I mean, he's really big into making sure former players feel like they're a part of it. And that's one of the hardest things to do is once a new coach takes over a program, the former players that didn't play for him feel maybe a little bit like, yeah, we don't really matter anymore. But Coach Leipold has made it like, hey, if you've ever played for this program, you're a part of this thing. You've paved the path and, you matter. And so we need you to, invest in this thing and be a part of it. And so anyways, it's amazing. And you talk about people trying to come for him. That's a good sign. Imitation is a sincerest form of flattery. And, he's one of the best ball coaches. He is. And he does it in a way that a lot of people want. And it's a way that, he might not win the press conference. He might not be out in front of headlines, but he's a winner. He's a winner. And that's hard to find.
You've been on both sides of it. What's the Kansas State rivalry like for people who aren't involved in it?
Kansas State rivalry, in my opinion, is a hidden gem where there's a lot of hate there, but it's a healthy hate.
Oh, I like that
where
term.
it's not
nice.
Like, hey, we can't get along. It's like, no, we're going to get along just fine. But when we line up against each other, like it matters. It matters who gets the bragging rights for the next, 13 months 11 months. And so anyways, yeah, no, it's real, and I'm excited for people to start really seeing that now,
Yeah.
especially that both programs are more viable. But the rivalry is real.
Is it weird for you to be a Jayhawk after your time as a Wildcat? How was that? What was that transition like for you? I mean, right? I mean, listen, we all have great opportunities in life, and you do what you got to do. But there was a time when you would have never thought you'd be wearing a Jayhawk pin, right?
Yeah, I would be lying if I disagreed with you there. There was never a time that I thought that would be happening. But you talk about my boss, Travis Goff. He's the athletic director there at the University of Kansas. He hired me at Northwestern several years ago, and when he got the job at the University of Kansas, I didn't hesitate to let him know that I'm on board and let's go build something. And obviously, like, he's someone that I trust immensely. He's someone that I believe in immensely, where I wanted to align with him. And the fact that it was back in my home state,
Awesome.
back where I could be around my family, back where I could, make an impact and I would be trusted to do my job. It just so happened to be at the University of Kansas, which was the rival for my alma mater.
Yeah.
So there was an element of it was a little strange at first, but at the end of the day, I've been given an opportunity to do a job that I can make an impact, that it matters, and I'm taking that head on, and I want to beat them just as bad as I want to beat anybody else.
North. We're taking you north. We're taking them north. We're taking Kansas State. We're taking Kansas. And you are the official stamp of approval. So this, again, to confirm, maybe there's a little border. Well, it's a little, but you're good. We're taking you north, and you agree. Yes?
We're north. We're a little bit of everything, but yes.
Okay.
We are good to be part of the Kings of the North.
Awesome. Colin, thank you so much for your time. Great conversation. And man, we're excited to watch some football in the state of Kansas this year.
I appreciate the time, Doug. Rock Chalk.
Joined now by Marquise Siegel of Kansas State. Marquise, thanks for joining us here in Kings of the North. If you can lean in a little bit even more there. You are super north from Nebraska, right? What was it like? What was it like growing up playing ball in Nebraska?
I feel in Nebraska we definitely get overlooked, especially when I was in high school, middle school. So just growing up, just already built that mindset of I'm going to be overlooked and already facing that adversity. So I feel it prepared me for life, just being in Nebraska and growing up in the cold, getting used to it, and the warm.
Did you play any snow football when you were growing up in Nebraska?
I actually didn't. My first game playing in the snow was Iowa State this year.
That was for real?
Yes.
Did you like it or no?
Nah.
Oh, come on, man. That's the best. No?
Not for defense.
Oh, right. Because the receivers know where they're going.
Yeah.
And you're trying to read their routes.
Yeah.
And you can't get your footing.
Definitely.
I get it. Now I feel bad for you. Oh my gosh.
It's all good.
What did you do? Did you have to make when you're playing safety in a game like that, did you creep any closer to the line of scrimmage? Did you have to do anything differently, knowing like this is crazy out here, there's snow on the field?
I wouldn't say you had to do anything differently. I just feel fundamentals got to go up. It's just when you go in for a tackle, you got to make sure you're not just trying to run to him. You got to settle your feet because you got to gather yourself and run through him.
Yeah.
So if you just try to run, he's going to slip off you.
You'd rather play on a nice normal field, though, where you can show your skills.
Most definitely.
See, like a guy like me, I want it to snow because then like everybody's just like slopping around.
Oh yeah, I like it. It was like definitely a good experience, but I didn't like how the outcome came out.
Okay. And maybe once every couple of years is good enough for the snow.
Yeah, definitely.
You were at North Dakota State before you came to K-State. Why was North Dakota State a place that you decided to go play football?
North Dakota State, for me at that time, was the best option for me. They was a winning football program. I was a part of a winning football program in high school, so I wanted to go back to that in college. So, and I feel that was the best option for me at that time.
So then how did you decide to come to K-State, Dad? What was it that drew you there?
First, just the connections. They came from North Dakota State. They looked at as underdogs. I'm looked at as an underdog. And then the connections just all came together. It's just closer to home. My trainer played under Coach Klieman when he was at NDSU. So that was another connection. Then Josh Hayes played there before me. He transferred from NDSU to Virginia, then K-State.
Okay.
And he played corner there. I played corner there. And then I knew I could fill his role too.
Okay. What's Coach Klieman like? If people out there watching, it's like, Kansas State's pretty good at football. What's this guy actually like, though?
He's a definition of a player's coach. He's there for you, the best for you. And he's developing you to be a best player and best human. person.
Why do you want a player's coach, right? Because sometimes when
Mhm.
people say, "Oh man, I want a guy who's like super hardcore, whatever,"
Yeah.
but to say a player's coach, that implies like he cares about you
Yeah.
and he shows it.
Yeah.
Why do you want that?
It's just you can only trust somebody as far as they communicate with you.
Mhm.
And it's just with him, he builds that trust, he builds that relationship. So when you're feeling down, you can go to him. You can open up instead of shying away from it. And that's what leads to people transferring or feeling depressed because they feel they can't come to somebody. He's somebody you can come to.
Okay.
And he's just somebody that's just gonna build you up. He's not gonna break you down.
Okay. So we're doing this Northern College football show,
Mhm.
right? We actually didn't have Kansas State as one of our teams at the start because you guys are kind of like right on the
Yeah.
border of like North and South or whatever.
Mhm.
But like, man, you play Farmageddon in the snow. It feels like, okay, you should be a Northern team. Should we take Kansas State? Do you think we should take you guys as a Northern team?
Yeah, most definitely. We're still a part of the North.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to double because what's it like at Kansas State? Like, is the weather there pretty nice? Does it get? I mean, like, I don't know. Do you have to like wear a winter coat a lot of the time, or what's it like?
I'll say in the winter, you definitely got to wear a coat. It's just like a normal. It's get all four weather.
Okay.
4 seasons.
Yeah.
So you get the cold, you get the hot, you get the fall, you get this like building up for it in spring.
Okay. So I'll be honest here. We're a Northern show.
Mhm.
I like talented Northern guys
Yes, sir.
who stay North. So you're a Nebraska guy. You go to North Dakota State, then you go to K-State. Be honest here, though. Did you ever think about going to a Southern school? Did you ever go visit and think like, oh man, it's nice down here. It's so sunny.
I never got a chance to visit a Southern school, so but definitely wish I could have.
Okay.
Just because I just wanted to be in that warm weather. I'm
Yeah.
tired of the cold. I'll
But
be honest.
the cold makes you tough, doesn't it?
It definitely does, but it's
Okay.
just that warm. You just feel good.
Yeah. But we want you. But also you love the North, right?
Most definitely.
Okay. We're just making sure. So you can go to the South on vacation.
Yeah,
Maybe
definitely.
that's like a good place. I looked this up. The last 3 years of
Mhm.
college football, there's a stat site that I like. There are 4 programs that have been ranked in the top 20 in offense and defense
Mhm.
in major college football each of the last 4 years. And I'm going to read you when I find it. I'm going to read you those 4 teams. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Those 4 teams are Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, and Kansas State.
Mm.
Balanced, elite, consistent over time, both sides of the ball.
Mm.
What do you think when you hear a stat like that Kansas State is in that kind of group?
You just said it. We consistent. We always gonna be at the consistent level. We
Yeah.
always. There's no ups. There's no downs. There might be a little up and a little bit down, but we're all gonna be on that standard. We keep. One thing we say is hold the standard. And
Hold
that's-
the standard.
Yep. Keep
Okay.
the standard. So that's what we maintain. That's our motto.
This is not something that you are worried about because you're just doing your job and playing
Mhm.
ball. But what do you think people think when they hear Kansas State football? And the thing I'm getting at is,
Mhm.
do you think the average college football fan knows how good K-State is?
No, I feel we're definitely overlooked and we're the underdogs, but I feel we thrive from that. A lot of our recruits and a lot of our players got overshadowed. They wasn't the top recruits. They wasn't the highest in their class. But with Kansas State, they develop guys and they make them better than those people that was at the top.
Joined now by Gene Taylor, athletic director at Kansas State. Gene, thanks for joining us on Kings of the North.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I
You are very of the North, but you went to Arizona State.
was actually born and raised in Arizona. Went to Arizona State and just from a career perspective, kind of ended up the Naval Academy I stopped at SMU for a while, then Naval Academy, and then my first AD job was at North Dakota State. So spent 13 years in North Dakota State and learned to, so I've had extremes. People ask me, what's 118 degrees like? And I said, well, I can tell you what 118 degrees like and what 50 below is like. So it's a little different.
Yeah. And
So when we left North Dakota State for jobs, we went to Iowa, which is still,
mhm.
and my wife said, I hope your next job is a little further south. And I heard somewhere where I want to move far enough south that when I have a snowblower in the back of my truck, somebody asked me what that is. So, but no, we loved our time in Fargo, loved our time in Iowa. It was great opportunities.
So does Kansas State belong in the North? We're taking Kansas State here in the North. Is this correct? Is it borderline?
Yeah, I think it's borderline. I think our winters aren't quite as harsh as some of the true North schools or the North states. But yeah, we get snow. We get we get cold.
Yeah.
mean, it's it's certainly not southern.
Yeah,
I think it's certainly not southern. We're definitely a true Midwest, but I think a lot of people in Kansas feel that we're a little further south than our true North school.
okay. We're taking. You're so good at football. We got to take you. Is
Well,
that
yeah,
all
that's
right?
fine. I'm in with that.
Yeah.
I'm in for that. Yeah.
Gene, when you think about where Kansas State football is positioned right now, both from like the big picture perspective of conference realignment and all those things, and then also which is what really matters, which is on the field, getting ready to compete. How do you feel about K-State?
I feel great. I think obviously we've been a consistent, successful program, and if you think back what Bill Snyder did the first time around and built, which Kansas State at one point was a school that they were thought about dropping football, way back when. But Schneider comes in, saves it, has a lot of success, leaves, comes back again, saves it again. A couple of Big 12 championships, a lot of bowl wins, a program that people look at and say, wow, that's a consistently good program. And then you have to replace a guy, a legend like Bill Snyder. And that's when I started looking at Chris Kleiman and said, if there's a guy that can do that and understand, the gravity of replacing a guy like Bill Snyder, and he's come in and he's built kind of his own style, but yet still respected the work that Coach Snyder did and the kind of football that we play at Kansas State. And he's built another consistent winner. I mean, it's, we won a Big 12 championship a couple of years ago, been to a couple of bowl games, had some wins, and all through this COVID time and a transfer portal time and, kind of different times in college athletics.
Yeah.
I think we're very consistent and a very great program to be a part of.
So let me give you a consistency stat. You said you're not a big stat geek, but I am. I like surprising people with stats. There's a site that I like that's just it ranks offenses and defenses nationally, right? So in the last 3 seasons, 21, 22, and 23, there are 4 programs that are top 20 offense and defense by their metrics.
Yeah.
Those 4 programs are Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, and Kansas State.
I'm not surprised.
You're not surprised by that?
I'm not. I mean, I just think, maybe 4 would maybe not. I'm probably a little bit surprised that we were 4 and amongst those other teams. But, I just think of our, Chris has always been a defensive guy. He's a defensive coordinator. So he's always prided himself on defense. But how we play offensive football, we can score by running the football. We've always had great offensive lines. We're a very physical type of football team. Yet we've also got athletic ability to run and throw the football, and score points differently. So, we're not going to rack up 500 yards a game.
Yeah.
But we're going to keep teams from building a bunch of yards, and we're going to probably, be 300, 350, 370 and score, 25 and more points a game.
If I was replacing a legendary coach, I think I would call you. Has anyone ever called you? Get advice?
Yeah. I've had a few people call me about, when we hired Chris and then we, a couple of ADs were looking for, coaches and there was a couple of our candidates that are currently Power 5 sitting coaches, asked me about them. And then there's a few that have called me about particularly in the basketball world, why I would hire a Coach Tang that's never been a head coach. And then now I get calls. Why did you hire Chris? What did you see in Chris?
Yeah.
What were you looking for? And so, I get some calls on a pretty, not regular basis, but every once in a while.
You kind of mentioned this when you had a coach like Bill Snyder, who's done it at that high a level for so long. When did you first start preparing to think about it? Because it sounds like you didn't have Bill Snyder walk in one day and say, "Hey, I'm retiring," and be like, "Okay, well, I guess I better start my search now." Like you were planning.
No, when I took the job as athletic director in 2017, Coach Snyder was coming off cancer battle, right? And he was, I don't remember, 70 something. And I think he had hinted before I got there, he wasn't sure how much longer he was going to go.
Okay.
And so when President Myers, who hired me, talked about it, during the process, it wasn't really much of a conversation. But when I got a chance to interview with the president one-on-one, he said, "Gene, you're probably going to have to replace Coach Snyder at some point.
Yep.
He's going to retire. It may be 2 years, it may be 5 years. But while you're here as athletic director, that's going to be a decision you're going to have to make in replacing him. And so in my mind, it started sooner. And then, after my first year, Coach came to me and we talked about it, and he wasn't quite ready, but he said, Gene, I don't know how many more years I have.
Yep.
And so he kind of put it in my mind. And so I just, I would just watch coaches and see the candidates, and, they didn't retire. And then so the next year kind of looked at candidates, and I knew that one day he was going to come in and say, I think this is it. And he did. And so I was, particularly the year that he did it, I was mentally prepared, like, okay, I think he's probably close to being done.
Okay. You were on the college football selection committee. I did the fake thing. They have the media come in and do it.
It's fun.
You did it for years. I did it for like a day.
I did it. Well, I did it as the mock one too before I became the committee member, and then you go through it again as a brand new committee member. So I've done it twice, but you walk in the room and it's real. It feels way different than the mock.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but they're fun to do. They're fun to do.
So, how much do you think the conversation changes in that room when you're picking 11? Because the group of 5 teams, I guess they'll be the highest ranked of that. You're picking 12 instead of 4, because you could look, I think people like to go back and say, oh, look who was ranked in the top 12. But I think maybe the fact that the top 12 now make it will change how the committee thinks about it. Or do you think, no, the thought process is the same 4 or 12?
I think basically there were, and this is something we talked about last year at the end of the, do we need to change some of our metrics? Do we need to change some of the things we look at? And we didn't at this point. They may have between when I got off and before they started, actually this year in October. But I think the general sense is we still have to pick the best top 25. We always do. And we have a lot of things we look at. We sit in our room. You've obviously done it. You got the big screen in front of you. You watch a lot of games. I think those processes will still remain the same. Where I think it's going to get more challenging is obviously the top 4 are going to be a lot easier to pick because their resumes are going to look a lot different.
Yep.
Right? They're going to be 12-0, 11-1, or 13-0, whatever the number is. But when you get down to 9 to 15, those resumes are going to look really, really similar. And yes, we still had to pick the top 12, but now you're going to go like, oh, wow, 15 looks a lot like 12 and 11. But yeah, we've got to pick them. And then the other part of it that I think is going to creep in, I think, is, okay, who's going to be a homeschool?
Yeah.
Who gets the host? Who gets the host? And does that make them think a little differently? I don't know. I think generally when they go in the room and they talk, they're going to have the same conversations that we had that I was part of for 3 years. Of, all right, what do they do well offensively? What do they do defensively? What makes them good? All those kind of things. I think those conversations will stay the same.
So I always say that I certainly would rather have the committee than a bunch of computers that we don't exactly know what the metrics are, and like poll voters who maybe woke up late on a Sunday morning or like, oh man, I forgot to do my poll. Yeah. And maybe I did that a couple times when I was a poll voter. So I think the committee is the best possible way to do it. It doesn't mean it's perfect. And it's somewhere between a curiosity and a concern for this year. For instance, the number 2 team in the Big 12, maybe the Big 12 championship game loser, that team versus the 4th or 5th team from the SEC, let's say. And I think over time, this is not a discussion about SEC bias, although maybe it's the whole reason we started this show, but like that whole thing, do you think, for instance, the number 2 team in the Big 12 will get a fair shake in the conversation? Or do you have any curiosities or concerns that the Big 10 and the SEC might soak up a lot of oxygen and spots?
I don't think so. And here's why. Because, again, at the end of the day, when we look up the board, I couldn't tell you, I could tell you, but I don't look up there and go, oh, well, I picked that school because they're an SEC school. I picked that school because I looked at their resume and their resume was better than anybody else that I might have looked at. The SEC and the Big Ten have been the Final Four schools, but again, when you start getting into 5 through 15, you're going to have a lot of good football teams in there. And,
Yep.
and you're going to say, wow, that team played in the Big 12 championship, and this team over here did make their championship. They're going to get a lot of respect for playing in that championship game.
Okay.
Even if they lost, because that's another game, another mark to look at, another team that they played against. And the fact that they earned the chance to be there, where this team was 4th or 5th in the SEC or the Big Ten, they're going to put a lot of weight on the fact they got to play that extra game. And that's always been the case, even with the 4 teams. But I know when we won the Big 12 championship, we were in the conversation deep into the year.
Okay.
And I was out of the room, but people talked about the quality of football we played. And then we won that Big 12 championship. Obviously, we didn't have the record enough to get in the top 4, but I think both TCU and us would have certainly made 12 at least.
So it sounds like I'm not asking for your prediction, but you feel pretty good about the Big 12 getting 2.
I think we get 2, and then there maybe comes some years we could get as many as 3.
Okay. Because it's going to be good ball this year in the Big 12.
Oh, yeah. Hey, you hope you don't beat each other up enough.
Right.
There's
a fine line.
There's a fine line, exactly.
Okay. Last question. Speaking of sucking up all the oxygen in the room. When you have large athletic departments that are no longer part of a conference, I think a lot of times people focus on like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Is there any part of it though that there are some great schools and athletic departments in this conference now, and maybe everybody's kind of on equal footing, resources, money, perception, the way they view themselves? Is there anything good about that?
Yeah, no, I think it is. I mean, obviously, Texas and Oklahoma are big brands.
Yep.
Nobody's going to deny that. And clearly they had a lot of success in this league. But I think right now, like you said, we've got a lot of schools that look similar. The budgets are similar. There's still, I think, obviously, we're talking. It's a football media day, and I know we're really going to be a really good football conference because there's no week off.
Yep.
If you think about our conference right now, you don't look and say, "Oh, thank God we played them." I mean, K. No offense, because I know I'm a K-State guy. K used to be one of those schools. They're not that school anymore. You don't want to play KU, right?
Nope.
And so there's a lot of schools. There's some conferences at the SEC and the Big Ten. I guarantee you they got games that are week off.
No.
How
How dare you? Not in the SEC. The SEC, everybody is great.
They got week offs. That's going to come back to haunt me. But I love the fact. And then when it comes to basketball season, no thanks. It's a brutal league, brutally good league.
Yeah.
I think we're the same way in football. So I like the fact that we've got some really good teams coming in. I think Cincinnati and Houston and BYU, they've come in and they've represented themselves very well early, and I'm looking forward to it.
So we're taking you in the north. We're excited to talk K-State. Last question for you. How do you think your fans feel right now about K-State athletics, K-State football? I started off by asking how you feel about it, but this world now where, they've got some new teams in the conference and some old foes are leaving, but how are they? Because the one thing we want to do on this show is help fans be happy.
Well, I tell you what, our fans are I think, in a great spot right now. Look, just, ticket sales obviously drive a lot of it, but just when I go out and I go to events other than a football or basketball event, or I go to a fan event, there's so much excitement with our fan base.
Okay.
And they love where it's going on with K-State. They love where we are as a program. Obviously this year running baseball, women's basketball. I mean, they're really generally excited about us as a program, and they're just showing it by buying tickets.
Okay. Gene Taylor, a lot of great experience. And if we have to hire anybody here at Kings of the North, I'm gonna call you for your advice.
Yeah, I don't know much about podcast and
there's not much
media.
to know.
Okay.
You'll figure it out quickly. Let me tell you. All right.
Right.
He's Gene Taylor, Kansas State Athletic Director. Thanks for joining us on Kings of the North. Joined now by Stan Weber, 38th year coming up, announcing Kansas State football games, 455 games. You'd never missed one in that whole time?
No, and that's nice. But during COVID, we went to every game physically. We were there for every football game and did not have to miss one. So that was when there was high risk, right?
Yeah.
How was that going to play out? And fortunately, that all worked out very well. So 455 straight games and keep rolling. And K-State has won 271 of those games. What's crazy is if I announce the next 29 wins, if that happens, K-State will have won 300 games with me announcing. That sounds like a big deal, but that's not what's funny. I will have announced more than 50% of all K-State wins. Because remember, K-State, like Northwestern back in the day, a long time ago, before Bill Snyder, the Purple Wildcats had the worst record in college football. So I've not experienced much of that. I mean, I was there 2 years before Bill Snyder, but when he got there, we started winning. So I've had this great joy of doing all these games, but I did a little math because in the summer, you're getting ready for the season and go, wait a second, I'm only 29 wins away from doing more than 50% of all K-State wins in the history of college football.
What a resurgence for the Purple Wildcats. It's a good time to be a Purple Wildcat right now.
A lot of fun.
Do you think the average college football fan knows how good Kansas State football is?
Probably not. But that's not anybody's fault. There's so much going on, and there's such an SEC emphasis about.
That's what we want to hear. That's exactly why we're doing this show.
Okay. Well, I mean,
Yes,
hey, look at the NFL draft choices, and CBS had those 2:30 windows, and Vern Lundquist and Gary Danielson. Man, they were great. So yeah, you're going to get that emphasis because so often, what do we hear on pregame shows? I take in as much as I can get, right? But what are the big subjects at the beginning of the year? Who's going to be in the college football playoff and who's going to win the Heisman? Well, that's not the end-all be-all of college football.
Right.
And so I look at it with a much wider breadth to have appreciation for, like Utah's coming into the Big 12.
Absolutely.
I've been around Utah my whole life, but I know how good Utah is and what they've done in the Pac-12. So I don't think everyone's had the time to be able to study K-State and what's happened. And because this is a team that 2 years ago won the Big 12 championship, not Oklahoma, not Texas. K-State was champs just 2 years ago. Yep. And they did it 3 times in the Big 12 already.
This world, and I asked Gene Taylor about this, no one's going to say that like, hey, it's awesome to lose Texas and Oklahoma, right? Nobody would say that. But when you now create a world where we're going to have a major conference without a program like that at the top that maybe has a different kind of resources, maybe sucks up all the oxygen, this is a wide open conference, but there's a lot of parity here. And there's a lot, the NFL is sold on parity. I am very curious to see how people respond to the Big 12 because I think it's going to be great ball if people give it a chance. What do you think this world will be like where you don't have a Texas and Oklahoma at the top, but you have a lot of great teams fighting each other every week?
Well, I'm very optimistic about where it's going to go, but I think it takes a little time to prove yourself. Okay. So the football is going to be well played, like you said. No doubt about it right now, 2024. But from a national perspective, without Oklahoma and Texas there, it's going to take them a little while longer to believe in the competitive level. Because you said it the best. It's an NFL model.
Yeah.
And it works. The competitiveness of the NFL is off the charts. And you can swing yourself from being a bottom third team to being the division champion in pro football. Not that big a deal. Well, we're going to see the same thing right here. Because you look at the bottom of the conference, there's no one who's going to wave their flag and say, yeah, we'll be at the bottom of the conference. KU would have been that for the Big 12 for the past 10 years or so. Not now, not with Lance Leipold. So take them out of the equation. But who's going to be Vanderbilt? Like Vanderbilt's, we're so glad to be in the SEC. And, we don't need to win any games. You guys just keep the rep going and keep the money flowing. Who's that? Arizona State? They're picked last. Arizona State,
which
Colorado.
Again, yeah.
These teams,
Arizona State. Yeah.
If you follow college football, you know that those programs have every capability of rising up to very strong levels. So who's the weakest link? This year, it'll be one group of teams, 2 or 3 that don't have as good a season, but 3 or 4 years from now, why can't they come up?
Yep.
Look at the city of Houston. Like they may not be at the same level you think. Well, go back and study how good football was at Houston.
Right.
When they were given a chance. Now they got the Big 12 moniker. The recruiting is going to change. So you're exactly right. The competitiveness right now is the story. Who's going to be the champion the most in the next 5 or 6 years? And it could be a number of teams. You don't think TCU thinks they can do it?
Absolutely.
K-State knows that they can do it. Oklahoma State with Mike Gundy. Utah's the favorite. There's so many teams to go. Before, when I've come to all these Big 12 media days, this is the 29th, right? Oklahoma would be the power. They dominated the Big 12, rightfully so. They won more championships. They were playing for national championships. And then Texas would always get the credit. Like, I bet they're going to be great this year. And they weren't always. Yeah. But when Oklahoma and Texas walked into the press conferences, you knew something different was happening. The media was all over them like, here we go. That's not true anymore. There's no Oklahoma on the schedule, no Texas. It's going to be great to see who wins the conference. But we need to prove it, I think, 2 or 3 years from now. I think the nation is going to be taking notice. Like, wow, different teams win each year, but they're playing high-level football. And they get a chance to play in the playoff.
Yes.
When TCU was given a chance, what did they do? They beat Michigan.
Right.
It didn't mean they would do it in a 3-game series or something, but they did it. So the Big 12 teams, once they get introduced to the college football playoff, they're going to have to play well there to get that ultimate credibility.
We're taking Kansas State and Kansas North. We're just taking them. We didn't have them there originally, but we're taking them.
Thank you. We're glad to be included.
Should we? I don't live in Kansas. Is Kansas North or Kansas? Farmageddon was in a foot of snow, and I thought, oh, I guess we're taking these guys.
We want to be included because we get
right?
along with
Oh,
everybody.
you're so nice.
And that's really what Kansas is about. You know, the people of Kansas are easy to get along with. They want to know you. So we'll be glad to join you. But the only word that you come to a conclusive statement on is central.
Yeah.
I mean, we are central from every, whatever you want to talk about, we're in the middle. And that's just kind of a big theme of, used to be the old Big 8. It was the center of the Big 8. But when we went to Texas A&M, it stretched out a little bit, but we still could be included with the group that went all the way down to the border of Texas. But any direction you want to go, Kansas will just say, we're right in the middle. We're right in the middle. So thanks for including us.
I mean,
You didn't say I had to be exclusive. Like K-State can only be on the North shows and not on the South. That's a different decision.
I don't want to hear you hanging out with Georgia, though. You're not going to hang out with Georgia, are you? You're not going to hang out with the dogs.
No.
Okay.
No, the SEC doesn't talk about the bottom half of their conference, okay? They only talk about which team's taking his turn at the top.
There's only like 3 teams.
And when Nick Saban's there, Alabama is unbelievable. But when Saban wasn't coaching, go back and look at some of the records.
No, guess what? Oh, he's the greatest college football coach of all time. He left, and they'll be exactly the same. That doesn't make any sense. So
can't have it both ways.
See, we're glad to have you, North. We're glad to have you, North.
Oh, thank you.
The way that Kansas State, the situation it had with Will Howard and Avery Johnson last year, how do you think it was handled a year ago? And what did you think of the resolution that has Avery Johnson as a potential filled starter here for Kansas State and Will Howard at Ohio State?
Well, Chris Kleiman came from North Dakota State and won national championships there as a defensive coordinator, then as a head coach, and came to Kansas State. This is his 6th year, and K-State's done great under him. But what is so understated is how many NFL quarterbacks he's been associated with. He's a safety at Northern Iowa. He coached at FCS national champion North Dakota State. This guy is a defensive-minded guru, a guy that understands defense, loves the safety position. He's out there coaching. But who talks about him with quarterbacks? Skylar Thompson played quarterback for K-State. You might not have noticed that a couple years ago. He's on the roster of the Miami Dolphins. He started a playoff game 2 years ago. Carson Wentz, you're familiar with him. Easton Stick, he is a Charger, okay? And you can just keep going down the line. And so he had Will Howard in the room with Skylar Thompson. People don't talk about that because that's kind of old news, but balancing that act was not easy. Guess what he did? He got them all to pull in the same direction. It's pretty magical how he can touch the quarterbacks and keep the whole team, and especially the quarterbacks, from fighting each other, but helping each other. Some credit needs to go to a great friend of mine and almost a Heisman Trophy winner, and Colin Klein. Okay, superstar coach. He moved to Texas A&M, K-State quarterback, K-State coach. He was in the room between Chris Kleiman and Colin Klein. He got these quarterbacks to love each other and help each other. And I was kind of shaking my head being an old quarterback. One of the awful things about the quarterback room is only one of you get to play.
Yep.
I mean, the running backs, the wide receivers, everybody can love each other and rotate. But unfortunately, I might want to be your best buddy, but it's either me or you, who quarterback. And that just creates that nastiness that you don't want to talk about. That wasn't happening. So one of the cool things was that somehow they did it with Skylar and Will. And then Adrian Martinez, who was the MVP in the spring league, UFL. Adrian Martinez went from Nebraska to K-State. Adrian Martinez came in, and Will Howard was going to be the starting quarterback for K-State. And Adrian Martinez came in from Nebraska, and he won the job. Why didn't Will Howard just throw up his hands and go, this is ridiculous? You know what Will Howard did? He helped Adrian Martinez learn the K-State way. So it's year after year after year, different quarterback combinations where they got along. That's what we had last year. Now, Will Howard with the transfer portal and the things that are available, I don't know how it all ended up in the end where he decided he was going to go to the transfer portal. Avery Johnson's an incredible young quarterback. Will's done amazing things in the 4 years he's been there at K-State. He was the quarterback that won the Big 12 championship. but Adrian
Absolutely.
Martinez started that year. So those two guys love each other. So I'm a big fan of Will Howard. I don't know all the players at K-State. I don't hang out with them. I'm too old. But sometimes I get to know the quarterbacks. I know Will Howard very well. I cannot wait to see what he brings to Ohio State. If they allow him to lead the team, he has a lot of Peyton Manning qualities. He understands the game so well that if they'll let that superstar talent look back to him and say, be our quarterback, be our leader, then he'll take Ohio State to unbelievable heights. So it's a win-win thing. I don't know how this works out in college football. No one's mad at each other at K-State. You cannot be more excited about Avery Johnson being the starting quarterback for K-State. But I'm so excited for Will because he might win a national championship with Ohio State. He has a chance to do that.
Ohio State's hoping so. What is it like in the state of Kansas right now for football fans, for Kansas State to be one of the most consistently winning programs in college football under Chris Kleiman after being that for decades under Bill Snyder, and Kansas football is back? Is this the best football in the state? I mean, there was a time, right? Mangino had it going, and we know Kansas had a run a little while ago. How good is the ball in the state right now, and how are the two fan bases reacting to it?
Very high. The quality Lance Leipold has proven, like Chris Kleiman, that if you can win at a lower level, you can win at the biggest level. Because I believe the competition, winning coaches are the ones who can say, I've got a good team, but I'm competing against a team that's just as good and believes they're going to win. They know they're going to win. They hardly ever lose. And you know you're going to win. That's the wars. And guess what? That doesn't matter if it's happening in junior college or FCS level or whatever. And that's what we're seeing proven in our state. Lance Leipold's the real deal, and Chris Kleiman's the real deal. They get along well, amazingly. Now, the fans, not so much. Okay. So at this time, K-State fans are off the charts. First of all, let's take K-State. K-State learned when they weren't as good at football about the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And younger fans may not know that Nebraska used to be dominant. Okay, there's a guy, Bob Devaney, then Tom Osborne, national championships. Okay, older guys are with me.
Yeah.
Nebraska fans were awesome, and they would travel. And they would take over a town, drink all the beer, and fill up the stadium. Well, K-State fans saw that. Guess who does that now?
Oh,
K-State
drink
fans.
all the beer.
Oh, man. So many bars, they say, you better stock up. And I hear the stories about they ran out of beer.
Huh.
The K-State fans come to party and they show and they go. So the excitement level now for K-State football is consistent. You mentioned it. Bill Snyder, Chris Kleiman, K-State fans have their chest pushed out. They're confident. They cannot wait. So the excitement level is off the charts. Now that Kansas is having that kind of mentality, and it's not just basketball, it's an interesting dynamic because the K-State fans will want to point this out. Sorry to be factual but biased here.
But he's got it on his shirt. I mean, what are we going to do?
K-State has won the last 15 football games against Kansas.
Ooh,
They've won 8 straight in Lawrence, including Lance Leipold's very good team last year. So K-State fans are not ready to say, this is a great rivalry, and there's a lot of back and forth. So we love the fact that tons of great Kansas kids are going to be leading the team. K-State's running back DJ Giddens from Junction City, Avery Johnson from Wichita, Kansas's best running back, Devin Neal from Lawrence High. Kansas football is being raised up. High school football, everyone's proud. But the K-State fans aren't ready to accept, let's get into competition. So this game's in Manhattan, so they want to make it 16 in a row. That is a must. There's no open-mindedness about the competition from the K-State perspective.
All right, Landis. So thanks to all those guys for joining us on the show. We want to go to Kansas State October 26th, don't we? We kind of don't we want to go to this?
I want to go to it. I've actually never been to Kansas. Have you been to Kansas before? Like the state, anywhere in the state? Yeah,
I've been to the state of Kansas once. I covered an Ohio State basketball game at Kansas.
Yeah, I need to get there. I am on the quest to get all 50 states. This is the weird one in the middle that I've not been to. So I need to get there.
So this game, so just so people understand this, Kansas is not playing its home games in its home stadium this year. This is similar to what Northwestern is doing, but also very different. Northwestern is taking 2 years to completely tear down its old stadium and build a stadium anew. And they're going to play in this smaller temporary field on campus at Northwestern. Kansas is redoing like 3/4 of its stadium. And so next year they will play in the redone stadium, while like 1/4 of that stadium is still not all the way done, is still old. But they did not want to be gone for 2 years from their stadium, especially while we are in a heyday of Kansas football. So Kansas football this year is going to play some early season games at the MLS facility the soccer stadium in Kansas City, and then they're playing at Arrowhead.
Mhm.
So they're playing the rest of their games at Arrowhead, but this Kansas State game is at Kansas State. It's in Manhattan. This is a huge rivalry. You heard people call it like a hidden gem of rivalries, and this is going to be super impactful. It's not the last week of the regular season, but we have eyeballs on this, and we will think about going. We will see if we can get ourselves there, if it fits our schedule. So put this on your calendar. But also, Kansas, some huge games. Kansas is at Illinois in week 2, which is going to be super fun. Saturday at 7 p.m. against Illinois. That's going to be a super awesome Northern game. Kansas is at West Virginia in week 4. Kansas hosts Iowa State on November 9th. Then they have BYU and Colorado. So Kansas, like, playing some Northern bangers, they're going to have a chance to prove how good they actually might be, right?
Yeah, I think we'll learn about them rather quickly. I'm trying to refresh my memory now of we did our Great Northern road trip show of whatever that was many weeks ago, and this game wasn't available to kind of put on the docket at the time. But I would have to imagine that it would rise up the list rather quickly.
Yeah,
Penn State, Wisconsin's that week. Nebraska, Ohio State's that week. There's some good ones, but yeah, man, Kansas State. Not only for us, for all of college football, it's an absolute banger.
And then Kansas State, the rest of the regular season, this is not another one, but they have a huge game. It's like right off the bat. Week 3, they host Arizona on a Friday night at 8 p.m. on Fox, which is an absolutely huge game. Kansas State at Colorado on October 12th, at West Virginia on October 19th, which again is going to be huge. So that 3-game stretch at Colorado, at West Virginia, and then home versus Kansas is how Kansas State starts October. Then they host Cincinnati on November 23rd, and then Farmageddon at Iowa State on November 30th. Farmageddon, we didn't mention at the start of the show, is also one of the reasons that Kansas and Kansas State joined the North, because Iowa State and Kansas State played in a snowstorm last year in Manhattan. And it was like, if you play in a snowstorm, you're of the North. So that put them over the top. Can't wait for Farmageddon.
Can't wait. So we've done one episode of the North Remembers. What's the timeline there? How quickly can we do a North Remembers about the 2023 Kansas State Iowa State game? Because I want to rewatch it.
No, like immediately.
Okay.
Like there's no, the timeline is being interesting. So like we are totally all in on that, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's quintessential. We have to be on the lookout for snow games. And that is one of the great snow games in in recent college football history, is it not?
Yeah, I think one of the most memorable for sure. Yeah.
And then the other reason that we might be adding Kansas and Kansas State is they're going to play Farmageddon in August next season in Ireland. And so it's like, well, we have to go to Ireland. I mean, what are we going to do? We're Kings of the North. We're going to play Iowa State, Kansas State on August 23rd, 2025 in Dublin, and we're not going to be there. So we want to go to Ireland, right? It's a sneaky reason.
Yeah.
But that would be a good time to revisit 2023 Iowa State, Kansas State as we prepare for 2025 Iowa State, Kansas State across the Atlantic.
That's right. And Ireland is of the North, right?
Absolutely.
I always get a little confused by the curvature of the globe, but Ireland is of the North. Latitudinally, I think it works.
Yeah. Who among us? Let he who has not been confused by the curvature of the globe throw the first stone. All right. That's it. We're at 28 viewers of the show. That's the goal. More viewers than teams. 28 teams in the North. Welcome to Kansas and Kansas State. We hope welcome to Kansas and Kansas State fans. We talk about all the Northern teams and we tell the South to cram it. That's what we do on Kings of the North. Thanks to everybody who joined us in those interviews. Thanks to our producer, Mike Urostowski, for making us look good and sound good. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. Football is back. And this is Kings of the North.